Right now, we're monitoring a weather impact alert as strong to severe thunderstorms are tracking our way. We're going to talk about what you need to do to keep you and your family safe. Also, new tariffs kicked in overnight. We're going to look at how they could impact your pocketbook and your wallet. And we'll bring in a local doctor to give us a diagnosis on new developments of the health of Pope Francis. This is The Take. Let's get it. Hello and welcome. I'm Chesley McNeil, and this is The Take, where we go above and beyond the headlines and we'll look at the why and the how of how stories are impacting you and our community. We're going to bring in some experts. These folks know just about everything, folks, on what's happening in our community. They'll give us their take on the latest headlines. But let's talk about this latest weather impact alert that could be experienced in our area later on tonight. Now, we have an alert from 10 p.m., that's tonight, until Wednesday, 7 a.m. That's when we're expecting these storms to push into our area. They will produce very heavy rain, possibly some gusty winds, maybe even some damaging winds up to about maybe 60 miles per hour or so. And that could knock down some power lines, or at least knock down some trees to fall on power lines that could lead to power outages. So what you need to do is you need to have your phone ready, have it right by your side there. Make sure you have all your alerts and warnings checked off so that when we send those out, you can get them right there on your phone. If you have a weather radio, that will do the same, but you want something that's going to at least wake you up. These storms are coming in through the overnight, can be very dangerous for our area because we're looking at a time frame between, I'd say, midnight and 3 a.m. is when the heftiest storms will be coming our way. And so we're going to keep you prepared and safe all day long, folks, and all night long as well. Again, these storms will be in the area at least until tomorrow morning, so be on the lookout for that. The other major headline is tariffs now in effect on goods from Canada and Mexico. Here's what we know about it so far. They kicked in just past midnight and placed an extra 25% tax on import goods from both countries. In response, the Canadian Prime Minister said his country would slap tariffs on more than $100 billion of American goods over the next 3 weeks. Along with these moves on our northern neighbors, an existing tariff on China doubled overnight from 10 to 20%. Now, these new fees are expected to impact the United States prices on everything from gasoline to food to cars and electronics. At the White House, President Trump defended the move, saying there is no more room left for negotiation on these tariffs.
It's going to be very costly for people to take advantage of this country. They can't come in and steal our money and steal our jobs and take our factories and take our businesses and expect not to be punished. And they're being punished by tariffs. It's a very powerful weapon.
All right, here now to make more sense of what happened overnight is a financial expert on international trade, Professor Tiber Besettis from Georgia Tech Economics. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
All right, Professor, right away, give us your take on these tariffs. What's behind this move from the White House?
What's behind, I really don't know. It's puzzling to be imposing tariffs on our major trading partners, especially the ones we have free trade agreement with, the United States, with the U.S., Mexico, Canada trade agreement, namely Canada and Mexico. But the ultimate consequence of that is going to be the prices of a lot of goods that people are buying are going to go up.
So these tariffs kicked in after midnight last night. How soon will we see the prices go up in the metro area?
Very quickly, because these tariffs are already in place. Everything that's crossing the border now is going to be subject to those tariffs. So things that have already come in are going to be sort of at old prices, but anything new that is being imported will immediately see higher prices, and those tariffs, by and large, will be passed on to consumers.
Give me an example on something that you know will be hit like right away, something that we'll see that increase on like right away.
So think about cars. If there's a $40,000 vehicle coming in from Mexico, that price of that vehicle is going to go to $50,000. Avocados, most of the avocados we consume in the U.S. are grown in Mexico. Those avocados are going to be at least 25% more expensive now.
Wow. And so, and this could keep going. What's your take on how long this could last, maybe?
My fear is that it's going to last some time, because it doesn't seem that the administration is willing to sort of consider lower tariffs or not imposing tariffs. Canada, Mexico, and China will retaliate. There are announcements of new additional tariffs coming in on April. So I think we're in for a long ride.
Mm-hmm. You know, one of the top priorities for voters back in November was the economy, but this seemed to hurt the economy, or is there a good side to this?
I don't see a good side to this. This will hurt the economy, will raise prices, will not keep inflation down, will make living more expensive. There are some estimates that show that the annual cost to consumers of these tariffs will be upwards of $3,000. It's going to reduce, if any retaliation is going to reduce production of U.S. firms and U.S. exports. That reduces employment, it reduces production, it reduces revenues, and reduces wages and salaries. I don't see anything good coming out of this.
So our northern neighbor, Canada, launched their own attack as well. Is this tariff battle, you think it's going to get worse? Could other countries jump into this?
Well, right now other countries won't jump in because they have no reason. They might jump in if in April the administration imposes the retaliatory tariffs that we're saying that they're going to impose in April. That's when the EU might retaliate. Man,
and you're saying this could go on and on and on, unfortunately.
Unfortunately, yes.
Oh my gosh, oh my gosh. Give us some others. You mentioned cars, you mentioned electronics, we talked about gasoline. What's some of the other things that may be surprising to us that may be going up? Or do you think across the board everything will be affected by this?
A lot of goods. I mean, we import about 40% of all of our imports come from Canada and Mexico. Any fresh fruit and vegetables we have during the winter months tend to come from Mexico. So, any sort of fresh foods you're eating right now likely will go up in prices. Fuel in the Midwest, gasoline is going to become more expensive because they source a lot of their oil from Canada. That is becoming expensive. Construction of homes, housing is going to go up in price because about a third of the softwood lumber that is used in home construction comes from Canada. That's being subject to higher tariff as well. So we have a housing crisis, shortage of housing, and we're increasing the cost of making houses.
Wow. Now, we just heard that Mexico is going to force their own tariffs now. The president is saying this is going to better our country. It's going to make us, or maybe force us to start producing things right here. Do you see that happening at all?
Well, we might start producing some goods here, but keep in mind that there's a reason that production is currently happening in Mexico and Canada, because they're more efficient and do it at a lower cost and hence lower prices to consumers. So we can produce some of these goods in the United States, but those are going to be more expensive products. Those prices, home production does not mean that goods are going to be as cheap as they are right now.
All right, Professor Bacetis, really appreciate your insight on this. Appreciate you talking to us and give us a little bit more clarity on it. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
All right. Don't go anywhere, folks. We'll be back right after this. All right, welcome back to the show. Cloudy skies overhead right now. Things are calm, but we're expecting showers and thunderstorms to roll into the area a little bit later on tonight. Today, most of the day will be on the dry side, but some of those thunderstorms tonight could be on the hefty side. We'll talk more about that in just a few minutes. As we stated at the top of the show, new tariffs in place against Canada and Mexico, while an existing one in China doubles. The moves come ahead of President Trump's scheduled address before a joint Congress later on tonight. Joining us now is NBC Washington correspondent Alice Barr, who's been covering politics for years now. And Alice, welcome back to the show. Give us your take on these tariffs and how much do you think they'll shake up the economy here?
Chesley, yeah, I mean, this is one of these things, we're not talking in abstract. American consumers are going to feel an impact from both the tariffs that the U.S. has imposed now on China, Canada, and Mexico, those tariffs taking effect just after midnight overnight, and the retaliatory tariffs that we've already seen promised from China, from Canada, and we're expecting before long to hear from Mexico, probably more of the same. We are looking at the kinds of things that, you could see an increase in the price of gas. Automakers are likely to feel a lot of the impact. Canada supplies also about 20% of the power for New York City, for instance. And so Ontario's premier said he would be happy to cut off electricity exports to the U.S. That's likely going to mean higher electric bills. There are really a lot of interconnected ties between the United States economy and particularly these three countries, Mexico, Canada, and China. I mentioned the auto industry. For instance, the price of a new car is predicted to go up by as much as $12,000. And NBC News spoke to one Michigan-based auto parts supplier that gets 30% of their materials from Canada. So that's where President Trump certainly believes in tariffs as a means to strengthen the U.S. economy and strengthen American companies, to strengthen U.S. manufacturing. But he himself has acknowledged there's going to be some pain, at least in the short term, for those American companies that are being affected, and specifically as well for American consumers that are going to see those prices passed down to them.
Alice, do you think this will potentially make a border trade war of some kind?
It's possible. I mean, it's happening already, really, because we've already seen the retaliation from China and from Canada. And, you know, with the Ontario premier talking about things like, hey, we'll cut off electric supply exports, like that's fighting words, kind of. And, you know, we've seen a number of examples of that, specifically with Canada, which, of course, is kind of one of our closest, by far, allies. And there have been things like, you know, at hockey games, Canadian fans booing to the national anthem, the U.S. national anthem. So, yeah, it's tense right now, certainly across these borders. And I think it depends how long these tariffs stay in place, the U.S. imposed tariffs, and what that impact continues to be in terms of how broad the ripples are going to be.
Talk to us a little bit, Alice, about what the president is going to address tonight.
Yeah, so he's likely to talk about the economy and the successes and the tariffs that he believes, again, are going to be something that will strengthen the U.S. economy. He campaigned on that. But he did campaign on lowering prices, and we're seeing those edge back up, the price of eggs, things like that have been grabbing headlines. And certainly we're going to hear about that from Senator Alyssa Slotkin of Michigan, who's delivering the Democratic rebuttal. But he's also, NBC News has learned, going to speak quite a bit about immigration. That's going to be about 1/8 of his overall speech from what we've heard. And he's likely to talk about, you know, foreign policy, the way that he is putting America first, as he had promised. You know, we've seen the effects on Ukraine with pausing military aid to Ukraine overnight to reevaluate. The White House is saying whether that's going toward a winning mission in Ukraine, and the reorienting of the U.S. as the center point of any of these relations. And then as well, of course, the downsizing of the federal government. He's going to talk about, you know, what he sees as large savings for the American people. And talk about the theme for him is the renewal of the American dream. That's how he's framing this speech.
Alice, sounds like the Democratic lawmakers are answering the president's planned address by inviting some of those fired federal workers that you just mentioned. I know you spoke with one. What was her message to you?
Yeah, she really wants to put a face to the sort of anonymous bureaucrat that a lot of people think of when they think of federal workers who are being laid off. She's pointing out these are people who live all over the country. There are a lot more federal workers outside Washington than inside. She said, you know, these are your neighbors. These are people that parents of your kids' friends at school. And so she wanted to really personalize that in hopes that that may come across from the Democratic lawmakers' guests who are going to include fired federal workers tonight.
All right. Alice Barr from Washington, D.C. Really appreciate your insight. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks.
All right, you can watch President Trump's joint address to Congress tonight right here on 11Alive Plus starting at 9 p.m. As we mentioned tonight, thunderstorms could be rolling into our forecast area that could produce some very gusty winds. In fact, the wind advisory kicks in at 1 o'clock this afternoon and will last until 7 a.m. tomorrow morning. We're looking at gusts up to 45, maybe up to 50 miles per hour. Our forecast track model shows clouds for much of the day. There'll be some breaks in those clouds where we'll get a little bit of sunshine poking through. I'm thinking around 10, 11 o'clock is when we'll see those first raindrops begin to move into our state. You notice that line of showers, thunderstorms will move in. I'd say anywhere between midnight and 3 a.m. is when we'll get the bulk of the rain, and those thunderstorms should be well east of our area by the time we get to 8 o'clock in the morning. Much of Wednesday will be dry. It's that early morning time. It's that overnight period, the wee hours of the morning, that we'll hear those thunderstorms rolling through the area. Again, some of which could be on the strong, severe side, so you need to be weather ready. And before those storms roll into our area, you still have time to make your plans, make your home safe before we have to deal with those impacts. Let's turn now to Rachel Goche, a meteorologist with Inshore Institute for Business and Home Safety. Rachel, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me this morning.
All right, give us your take on these storms and what we could see.
Yeah, you know, meteorological spring just began the other day, March 1st. So this is one of our first spring systems rolling across the country. We're sure to see many more as we head into that spring severe weather season, March, April, May. So really now as they begin to start making those preparations, not just for this system, but for any future systems we see. You want to make sure you get your home in order before these storms really begin to roll in. And we have a variety of ways you can do that. The roof, of course, we say is your home's first line of defense. So get up there, clean out those gutters and downspouts. That's one of the simplest but most effective things you can do to protect your home. And that's important because you want to keep any water from backing up into your roof. So you want that to be able to flow away from your home. And another really simple thing you can do, get out there, trim those tree branches back, any dying or diseased trees, especially ones that overhang your roof. Trim those back, make sure they are out of the picture for this upcoming severe weather season.
You mentioned, we're just at the beginning of this, right? And we'll have storms rolling through. Once you prepare one time, do you need to keep preparing for almost each storm that comes in?
Well, most of these things are things you can do to prepare your home really for the whole severe weather season. Of course, you want to kind of stay up to date with things as the severe weather season progresses, but kind of getting your roof in order is one of those things. Another thing you can do that's going to be a one and done situation is getting one of those protective screens that can protect your HVAC system. When we see high winds and hail, that can really do a number on your HVAC system. So get one of those protective screens that can really protect against hail. That's another big thing. Another thing you can do, again, another one and done thing, seal gaps and cracks around your home. So that's going to be particularly around windows and doors. That's going to prevent that wind-driven rain that is produced by thunderstorms from getting into the interior home, causing water damage. So those are some things that you can do once, and you most likely will not have to do them again when the next storm is beginning to approach.
It's funny you mentioned that. I had a gutter that was dislodged from the pipe that sends it out back, and that water got right down into my foundation, went into my basement. So a good tip right there. What else is one thing that did you mention the thing that homeowners forget to keep an eye on?
Things that homeowners forget to keep an eye on. That is a good one. I think just people don't realize how important the roof is. Again, we say it's the first line of defense. The reason why this is so important is because our research that we do here at IBHS shows that your shingles can blow off in winds as low as 50 to 60 miles per hour. That's not even often severe thunderstorm strength. So it doesn't take much to blow your shingles off the roof. Mm-hmm. And once that happens, those gaps or cracks in your roof deck or that plywood that's actually attached to your roof, those gaps and cracks are supposed to be there to allow your roof to contract and expand. But if your roof cover is missing and you have heavy rain, we know that our research here shows that for every 1 inch of rain that falls, up to 9 bathtubs full of water can get inside your roof. So that's really bad. Of course, that leads to a cascade of damage. You get that water damage in the interior home, things like mold. Our evidence shows that this increases the cost of an insurance claim by almost 3 times as much. So I would say really what people do the most is really underestimate how important the roof is. So that's why we ask people to take that preventative maintenance and just get your roof in order. Another thing you can do is have a roofer come out and inspect the condition of your roof. You want to make sure that you don't have any missing or torn or broken shingles, again, because you want to prevent at all costs that water from being able to get inside your home. All
right. Thanks a lot, meteorologist Rachel Gauthier. Really appreciate that insight. Very timely for our viewers around here getting ready for some thunderstorms rolling through the area later on tonight. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, no problem. Our 11Alive Weather Impact team will be streaming tonight right here on 11Alive Plus into tomorrow morning, monitoring that heavy rain and those gusty or damaging winds that could impact our area. We'll be on from 10 p.m. tonight through 7 a.m. on Wednesday. You want to watch and stay informed and stay safe with 11Alive Plus. You're watching 11Alive Plus, and we'll be back right after this. All right, welcome back. An update now on the health of Pope Francis. Here's what we know. This morning, the Vatican says his condition became stable enough so he was no longer needed to wear a mechanical ventilation mask to pump oxygen into his lungs. The 88-year-old pontiff remains in the hospital fighting a case of double pneumonia. Yesterday, Pope Francis had to resume using the mask after doctors say they had to remove what they describe as copious amounts of mucus from his lungs. Vatican officials say Francis remains alert-oriented and is cooperating with medical personnel. Here to dive a little bit deeper on that medical condition is friend of the show, Dr. Sujatha Reddy from Northside Hospital. And Dr. Reddy, first of all, give us your take on what you heard so far. Can we say that the Pope is getting better?
It's hard to say that, Chesley, because these are serious conditions, like double pneumonia. It's very serious. And then having to undergo 2 bronchoscopies, which are, minor procedures, but when you're 88, every procedure counts. So I think it's good that he's not getting any worse at this point. But I think I would use the word we have to be guarded about his condition still.
Talk to us about this copious amounts of mucus that they had to remove. Is that like a big thing?
It's a very common thing when people have tight airways. So just like when the bronchi or the airways shrink, which is what we see with asthma or something called reactive airway disease, it's hard for air to get in, but it's also hard for secretions to come out. And when you have an infection, your lungs are making a lot of secretions. And if you can't get those out, they can block the airways and literally collapse those air sacs where the oxygen and blood meet. And that can lead to, problems breathing, problems even ventilating, and even a collapsed lung. So it's very important to get those secretions out. It is not uncommon to have help with that, but I think it just tells us that this is a really serious infection.
Is that something that would eventually go away, or will they have to keep doing that, do you think, because of his condition?
No, I think if we can, great question. If we can get him to clear this infection, get him breathing on his own, keep those airways open with medication, or once the inflammation from the infection goes away, those airways will stay open, then he may be able to cough that stuff up himself. But when the airways are tight and you've got someone that's probably weak already, it's hard to keep coughing, hard to get those secretions out, and they must come out, or like I said, they can block the airway and even lead to a collapsed lung.
Well, the doctors keep talking about, his condition is guarded, right? They're saying it's guarded, but they also keep talking about his health condition or his crisis as in the past tense. When can we start to breathe a sigh of relief, or do you think we will?
No, I hope we will, Chesley. I think we just have to wait and see. I think he hasn't had any more what sounds like respiratory crises where I think maybe he was struggling to catch a breath. Again, this is all speculation, but the fact that we haven't heard any more of those, I do think that's a good sign. We just have to hope he keeps getting better and improves, or at least stays stable, to let the antibiotics and medications work to fight infection, open up the airways, and help his lungs recover.
88 years old, Dr. Reddy. I mean, talk to me about what kind of fighter this man is.
Yeah, 88 is it's an older person. He's already got some lung issues from the past. We know as a child, he had part of his lung removed, which means he's already on a little bit of less of a reserve than a person with 2 full lungs. But the age is a big deal, So again, I think we have to take it one day at a time. It sounds like they're doing everything they can, and we just have to hope that he doesn't get any worse and these antibiotics kick in to fight the infection.
Okay, Dr. Reddy, always good insight from you, always, and you're always ready to come on at a moment's notice. We appreciate you.
Thanks, Chesley.
All right, have a great day.
You too.
My friend, Dr. Reddy, right there, folks. He's always ready. All right, we're back with my final take. You're watching The Take. We're back right after this. Atlanta City Public School students on proud display in New Orleans. We had marching bands from South Atlanta High School and Carver High School perform for Mardi Gras parades over the weekend. Yep, some big time talent right here from the A joining for those celebrations. What a good memory for all the students there. All right, before we go, my final take. Yeah, March is Women's History Month, and look who's making history. Yeah, not on the tennis court, but off the tennis court. Tennis great Serena Williams, now as part owner of the expansion franchise WNBA team in Toronto known as the Tempo. This makes Serena part owner of 3 professional sports teams. She's a part owner for a national women's soccer league club called the Angel City FC. She's also, with her sister, part owner of the Miami Dolphins, and now she owns part of a team in the WNBA. How cool is that? Making history. She wowed us on the court, now she's wowing us off the court. And as Martin Lawrence would say, you go, girl. Absolutely. Perhaps she'll be an owner outright for a team. Maybe Atlanta will sell one of its teams. Be nice to have her as a neighbor. Happy Women's History Month. Before we go, your moment of Zen.